Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Having Had podcast. I want to give a couple disclaimers up front. I have no idea what I'm doing, but that's never stopped me before. So, this is going to be episode 2, but it is the first episode I'm recording. So, let's see how this goes. Second disclaimer is that I'm going to have guests that are from different fields. There's going to be some shop talk, so to speak, that, you know, try not to get too far into the weeds of that and alienate anybody that doesn't know what we're talking about. We'll do our best to keep you informed. And today's guest, or my friend, is one of those that we're likely to do that. Today we'll be focused on film. My friend that's here today, I have done 27 films or series with. I looked it up. 14 of those, yeah.
I had no idea.
14 of those, I was working for him. He was my boss. So today we have with us Bob Bates, Gaffer, or Chief Lighting Technician Extraordinaire. Yay.
Yay. Applause.
The very first day I was on a film, you were the gaffer. And I didn't meet you that day. It was one of the most chaotic days of my life. But it was on a gem of a film called Harold and Kumar 2, Escape from Guantanamo Bay.
I had no idea that we've done that many movies together or projects
27.
together. I know. Interesting.
Most of them are not good. Most of them look good. At least, you know.
I mean, the lighting's great, of
The
course.
lighting's great. There's a few gems in there. I was looking along,
Yeah.
but there's also a couple of really good ones too. We'll cover that. Just out of the gate, how and where did you grow up? What was childhood like for you?
I was born in Mississippi, so I grew up there, spent most of my time there, and then that's where I got into the industry at a production company. And I think it was 92. So started at a commercial house, which at the time was the largest production company in Mississippi. We did a lot of regional, some national work, but it's a small market, so I got to dabble in a lot of things. So I was hired on as a staff PA, and that's what introduced me to the industry. So I would do PA, you kind of do a little bit of everything, especially at a small production company. But then, you start moving, learning other things, and you start working as a grip or in lighting, doing sound. So anyway, just doing a lot of that stuff.
Before we jump totally into work, is there anything in particular you were into as a kid growing up? Like, were you into music or sports or?
I was into music. I wanted to learn how to play drums. Took drums lessons briefly. My dad was a drummer, so it was one of those things where wanting to connect with your dad and
Yeah.
Anyway, and able to keep rhythm. So I still play around. I don't have a kit anymore, but I still bongos and congos and that sort of thing, occasion and stuff. So I do enjoy that. But also relating to the industry, my interest was special effects makeup. I just thought that was the coolest thing. I was into, Fan Gore magazine and all those horror movies.
That?
Yeah, growing up
No
as a
idea.
kid. And so that's what I thought I wanted to be. And then when you're young, you thought, you want to be a director. I feel like everybody wants to be a director or a writer. And then until you get in the business and you're like, I'm not sure I want to do that part. Anyway, so I did enjoy music. I still do. And, I guess thinking back, I don't know if I should have gone into special effects makeup. I just never dabbled enough into it. So,
Yeah. Um, did you have any particular? I know for me, this is kind of a personal. Did you have any childhood heroes? Mine were Evil Knievel and
yeah.
Eddie Van Halen So maybe Gene Simmons a little bit. But did you have a particular childhood hero?
Um, I don't, it's a good question, and I've never honestly really thought about it. I don't, Evil Knievel, it's interesting you say that, and knowing your background, yours being musicians. I mean, looking back, I guess now thinking on it, what I would fixate on as a kid is somebody like Alfred Hitchcock. I just loved his work. Is he a hero? Not so much,
Yeah,
but I just, having just fixating on someone like that growing up and what he was able to achieve. I had respect for that.
gotcha. Um, so you kind of already alluded to it a little bit. What your on ramp was just working for a rental house there in Jackson, correct?
Yeah.
And mostly you're doing local commercials.
Doing local commercials, and it was more of a production, full service production company. So back when I got started, there was an online suite, so you would shooting film and possibly editing on film, and then you would online it, and then
Yeah.
those dubs would go to your TV stations for broadcast. So when I started, film was done as beta SP was just coming in. We're 3/4 either shooting film 3/4 to beta SP. And then digital world started coming in, and that's when you started getting the Avids and started doing your offline cuts on Avids. And we had animation suite. So I got to dabble in all that. And the years that I was at that first company, I think it was about 7 years, 6 or 7 years. I moved, I started producing commercials, producing and ADing. So I loved doing that, but it was on a, smaller scale than doing a feature or a TV series. But I honestly wish should have gone down that path of ADing. And I kind of go back to it every, once or twice a year, and I enjoy it until it kind of catches me up and revives me for it. But now later in my career, I kind of do I start producing more just because I've, been in the
Yeah.
business for so long. I kind of got a grasp on how things are handled on set. And I start thinking maybe I should produce, produce more, even if it's just in the commercial world still. So
Gotcha. So you recognized pretty quickly, what were you, a teenager or just out of high school, that this is your career path and this is what you wanted to do?
I was, when I started, I was 20 years old when I got in the production world. And I was working at a video store, video library in Jackson, and absolutely loved it. Met the post guy, Perry came in, and I talked to him, just asked him what he worked, where he worked as he was filling out his membership. And he told me, I was like, oh, I've always wanted to do that. I've always wanted to be a director. I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm in post, and here you need to talk to this guy in the production side of it. So I called that person, Jeff, who is still a really good friend of mine, Jeff Tanner. And he's the one that he gave me my start. And so I blame him for it all. But anyway, he's still a really good friend. I'd like to think that we probably talk, once or twice every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So we stay in touch. But
So when did you end up in electric? How did you
I I
land
was
there?
yeah, I was being at that production company, they would call, there was a commercial that came in town. It was a big national beverage commercial, and they needed some people for the rigging electric team. And so asked me if I can come in and just help lay cable and, put park cans up and stuff. So I did. And I met the crew that was on that commercial was a New Orleans based feature crew. They did commercials as well, but they were one of the only feature crews at the time. This was before the Louisiana tax incentive when the film industry blew up.
Who was the gaffer?
Mike
Mikey.
McLaughlin. Yep.
Yeah.
And so Mikey and Big Vic Keatley were on it, and so that's when I met them, and they said, "What, you want to come join us? Come hang out with us." And so they called me up, and of course I was like, "This is awesome! I love this." Yeah. So they called me up, and their next movie was a movie called Dracula 2000, and it was in like October of '99. And anyway, I did that, but it was a month of nights in the French Quarter, and I absolutely loved it. It was
At that age, yeah.
at that, yeah, and I had a friend that worked at the production company. He had a apartment, like a second home in the French Quarter, and so I asked him if I could rent it, for it was a month and a half, 2 months, whatever it was. And he's like, sure. So I lived in the French Quarter in this one bedroom apartment and would go to work at 5 p.m. and get home. We'd go to the bar at 6:30, 7 in the morning and go home. It was, I don't know. It was a different, like, I was young. I was very young.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Fast
but
forward to between what 2007 and 2012, it was all the vampire stuff was hugely popular, and it seemed like for 4 or 5 years, I know I personally did four vampire shows, it's seemingly back to back. It was so miserable,
yeah,
just nights for months at a time, night exteriors.
it's hard. And I just, did a series interview with a vampire in New Orleans last year. And when I got called for that, I was a little reluctant because you're sitting there thinking, I haven't read the script, but I know it's a
Yeah.
series on vampires in New Orleans. Vampires come out at night, and they're coming to New Orleans because they want to shoot the landscape. So you're not going to be on stage the whole time. You're going
Yeah.
to be out in the quarter.
Yeah.
And so I was a little hesitant on that because I was like, I don't know if I can do 5 months, 6 months of nights or whatever it was. But I met with the DP and just absolutely fell in love with him. I was in his passion for it. And then also the twist of that series, the modern day Dubai versus the period piece of the French Quarter. So visually, lighting wise, I was like, oh, that sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
I'll endure that time, the nights. And I'm glad I did because made a lot of friendships on that.
Do you remember, was there a period or a time or a moment that just working as an electrician or a set lighting tech, where you decided that you wanted to be a gaffer? And by the way, if you want to give, for anybody that doesn't know, a definition of what a gaffer or a chief lighting technician is.
Gaffer is the um, head electrician or head set lighting technician. He or she is the person that collaborates with the director of photography, and they help set the lighting style of the movie. So
Yeah.
for me, it's now I'm a gaffer, or I feel evolved into a chief lighting technician. I feel
Yeah.
there is a difference,
Hmm.
just by education, and I would like to think that a chief lighting technician is someone that the difference between the two is a chief lighting technician is someone that with the experience can come in and um, add a creative outlook on the project.
Yeah.
So not necessarily as someone that if you have a DOP that just needs someone to call on his radio on his channel and set a light based on what the DP says. And I'm not discounting that at all because
Yeah.
I still work with DPs that are very particular and they want to be, this is the light I want and this is how I want it rigged and so on.
Yeah.
I think, now over the years, I think that I've tried to gain that trust with a DOP, and they'll be, know that I've got a few good ideas, I mean, a couple bad ones maybe, but a few good ones that they'll be like, they trust me to say, I just need either, if they tell me they need a hard source or a soft source in the corner, then I know what we have ready on the floor to offer up.
Do you, getting back to the first part of that, do you remember when you kind of made the decision to commit to that?
Um, it was, I was kind of doing it that to tell you the truth, no, I don't, because I was dabbling in a little
Yeah.
bit when I was at the production company. But looking back on it now, you're kind of a big fish in a small pond scenario.
Yep.
So you were, back then you thought you knew it all because this is all you knew. This was just the environment. And so you're gaffing commercials or ADing or producing these commercials. I can do this anywhere.
Yeah.
And until you step in that you go to that next tier and you're like, oh, okay, this is done a lot differently. But what was good about it is to answer your question, I don't remember that day. I do remember when I got my first gaffing job and how ecstatic I was. And it was actually Harold and Kumar.
Yeah.
And
so I was on the first show. My first show was the first. Perfect.
Yes. And that was my first feature. And I remember that first day. I remember the setup. I remember everything about my first day as a gaffer. And I had a great DP that really.
What was his name?
Darren Okada.
That's right.
And he was really patient with me and really helpful with me. So anyway, we had a really good working relationship.
I can attest to his patience because, like I said in the beginning, I used to do in between rock and roll tours, I rigged concerts. I worked as an uprigger, climbing and, just essentially just pulling up, chain motors, pulling up points. And my rigging boss here in town got a call. They needed extra riggers. If I remember right, I came in the last week of filming, and I remember the AD saying the first day I was there that there was 15 days of stuff left to shoot in 4 days. And it was chaos. And I honest to God did not know what a single piece of grip gear was called. I didn't know what a grip did. I come in, my first day we were at that prison.
Right.
And so I knew nothing, absolutely nothing. And I walked into kind of let's just say it was not an awesome situation the last week of that show in the grip department. Right. And the fact that I straight off touring for all these years where I had some clout, like a month before I'd been flown business class back from Australia, and I show up and got cussed out repeatedly for the first 4 hours by guys that were half my age, and then was cleaning out a jockey box and and pressure washing sandbags my first day. It was a bit of a shock. But the second day we were at the stage and there were like 3 sets shooting simultaneously, and we were so undermanned and it was so chaotic that I got sent to it was a poor man's process set with all the, just the solids hung up in a box, and They've got a car sitting there, and I walk up and Darren was hollering, "Where's local lady? Where's grip?" And I was too scared to even say I'm a grip. I didn't even identify as, I didn't even know yet.
Yeah.
And finally I said, I'm a grip. And he just starts, there's like a 1K or something at the front of the, or tweenie, whatever it was, in front of the car.
Yeah.
And he's like, I need you to slow down the hood, slow down the passenger seat, do this, a right sider. I need to chop it hard right here. And I was just like, I had no idea I didn't know what he meant.
Right.
And I just stood there, and from behind me, I hear, "You don't have any idea what he just said, do you?" And I turned around, it was Chris Trosclair, and this is this, guy from South Louisiana that is almost English as a second language. And thankfully he helped me. He's like, "You need to put this right here. This is a C-stand." I knew nothing.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that was my experience on the first show you gaffed, which was my first day.
But going back to that, I mean, when you walked into that set, were you not in awe over it all?
Oh,
like
totally overwhelmed.
Movie magic. This is yeah.
I remember walking in that first day, and there was the big green screen set where they were flying Rob Corddry, like stunts, had a big rig for him. It was like they wanted a shot up of him skydiving, falling towards the ground, and there were all the Ritter fans, and then there was another couple of interior sets, and it was just chaos. I knew nothing, and it was totally overwhelming. Absolutely. And I at least came from rock and roll, where I had done, huge national tours and, arena and even stadium shows and all over the world. So the scope of it's just different, now that you've done obviously some really big shows, and, people can look at your IMDb, but just on stuff I've done with you, the scope and scale of some of it. We did Percy Jackson 2, which was just ridiculous. Took an entire abandoned Six Flags in New Orleans that had been destroyed during Hurricane Katrina and lit it again, made it a working, set essentially. And Greyhound with Tom Hanks, which the scope of that was incredible as well. And you did, was it season 4 and 5 or just 4 of Stranger Things?
Just 4.
Just 4.
Yeah.
So, you've done some huge stuff. I'm going to tell a little, as abbreviated as I can, a story of a conversation I had that leads into this question. I was maybe 8 or 10 years into my touring career, and I was a guitar tech for a band that I've been with quite a while, and I was also stage managing, and we were halfway through the middle of a touring cycle, and normally you don't change vendors halfway through a cycle. Your audio company you're carrying, the lighting company you're carrying, once you've got the rig designed and built out and it goes in and off, on and off truck, you carry it for the whole cycle. But for whatever reason, they changed lighting companies halfway through. And we did not get a day of pre-production at the start of the next leg to get this, to get everything sorted out. How's the pack going to fit in the truck? How, it's all different stuff, and it comes with a different tech from a different company. And we didn't get a pre-production day. So day of show, first day back of a leg, we're in Long Island in some rock club. And, our LD, I think, had a death in the family, and the lighting designer, and wasn't able to fly out. And the tech that had been with us the whole, year of touring missed his flight. Well, the company sent out an LD knowing we didn't have our guy, and nothing was prepped. Rock tours, it all has to be prepped and shot before it goes out, or at least you do it in pre-production. And I'm talking, it wasn't prepped to the point that Sacco didn't have ends put on, like nothing, no cable looms were made. And I'm talking just probably 60 or 80 moving lights that had to go up. Yeah. And I watched this guy have the most difficult, stressful day I've ever seen anybody have. And I'm in my world putting out all my own fires, stage managing. And at the end of the day, he was able to get the lights on. There was nothing programmed. The band was losing their mind, cussing at me. You go out there and knock all his teeth out. Like, they were furious, and they're sending him home. They wanted to send him home on a bus, not even fly him home next day. And in my mind, I'm like, this guy did an amazing job, but band didn't want to hear that. So we get on the crew bus that night after I've loaded all the trucks and showered. Most everybody's in bed. I'm the last guy, I think, getting on. I sit down in the front lounge to eat my after show food, and this guy walks in, and he's like, "Hey man, which bunk's open?" Like, he hadn't even been on the bus yet. I tell him which bunk he can throw his stuff in. I'm like, "This is your plate here. They ordered you some food." And he's like, "Okay." He comes back and sits down, and I looked at him and I just said, "Man, are you okay?" He looked at me like, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "You just had like the hardest day I've ever seen anybody have. I've been doing this a little while, and that sucked, man. Like, are you okay?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I guess he could see on my face that I was baffled. And he goes, "Man," he said, "I was in the Navy for 14 years. And he said, I was going to do full career, but I got out about 5 years ago." And he said, "My job," he said, "I was in the Desert Shield." And he said, "I was on so-and-so aircraft carrier. I was the only person that ran the computer program that decoded the launch codes from the Pentagon for the Patriot missiles." And he said, they had one other guy that could do my job, but they moved him around from other ship to ship for security reasons. And he said, "But if I screwed up on that job, people died." And, and it happened. He said, "This is just a stupid rock show." Right. And I was like, that one conversation changed everything for me. I took my job I wanted to be good so bad. I was so passionate about what I did, but at a huge cost. I was early 30s. I was completely unhealthy. My diet was garbage. I did not exercise. everything was focused on work. My marriage at the time suffered, my relationship with my kids. I was so focused on the job. And that one conversation changed that. So, after a not so brief story, do you have difficulty with the pressure or stress of bigger or more high profile shows, or with a big name DP?
Um, yes. Short answer is yes, absolutely. It's you saying that there's absolutely been those challenges to where, where my relationships have suffered. I've got 3 kids and I have fallen short plenty, with my relationship with my kids because of work. Um, I had a previous marriage. I mean, it's a tough lifestyle. I feel like it's probably similar to the path, in music. But,
Yes.
for me, I mean, here I am sitting on the road. I'm on a project in New Mexico. And some of my kids are, one of my son's in Mississippi and my other son's in Alabama and my wife and daughter in Alabama. And I'm sitting here for 3 months away from all of them.
Yeah.
So it's hard. But I've gotten to the point now in my life, that I feel like I can pause for a moment, or I make effort to fly home and see them. I try to see my wife and daughter, because my boys are grown up and out of the house now.
Yeah.
But I try to fly home. We try to see each other every 2 weeks, and at least. So, and it's, flying home. It's, you go and I got to get somebody to cover me on a Friday night because then, as you know, the film industry, Friday night is when you're doing your night exterior stuff. So
Yep.
that's our call time is typically about 5 or 6 p.m. and we get off at 6 to 7 a.m. on Saturday morning. And then you sleep all day Saturday and then travel back to whatever on,
Super healthy.
yeah, really healthy. So yes, there's absolutely been those struggles, over the years, but, I try to manage it better now. And I started working out and trying to be better with my diet years ago. So I've started making time for that where I get up in the morning and, you know, anyway, trying to be healthy, try to lead that healthy lifestyle. But it is absolutely hard. There's been a few regrets, with those relationships with your kids.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Um, I mean, my sister has missed out. My parents, it's, anyway, it is hard. So,
Yeah. This again, I need to preface this next one. The question that I have, is there anyone that you kind of patterned yourself after as a department head or a leader? And the reason I asked the question, and to all the fellow crew of Cine South Lighting, your wonderful company that I've spent so many days working for, that will no doubt give me shit for what I'm about to say. I'm going to say it anyway. But when I came in, because I immediately recognized once I got to know you, and this is really at the my motivation for doing this podcast to begin with is because of the connections I've made with people, and the way that works and what that looks like and how it can be so impactful in our lives, at least for me. When I came in on Harold and Kumar we were one show after another back then. And it just so happened that the first, I think 8 or 10 shows I did, a couple of them you were best boy on, I think, but, or a local best or whatever. But as I got to know you, obviously I saw our similarities. We're 6 months apart in age. We both were going through a divorce at the time. We both had you had boys, I had girls that were the same ages, and a lot of similarities. And in pretty short order, my divorce was particularly difficult. Had a lot of moving parts, but I kind of went through it for several years. And during that whole time, I watched you become and establish yourself as a gaffer here in Louisiana. And I also watched you personally, and I watched you kind of, not to like kind of grow up a little bit. You weren't super healthy when I met you, and within a couple years, you were healthy. You were dressing nicer. You your shoulders were back. Your head was up. You were, um, you know, that meant something to me. I was watching that. And then I watched as you met Coley, you met your now wife, and I watched you, find love after a divorce. And I watched that happen and watched you start, you know, another family,
Yep.
all the while watching you professionally. And the one last bit of this is that, you know, I don't know what it is about our business, the old school style of really hard ass department heads and almost hazing. And there's a lot of just ruling your department through terror, lording over, you and I both know some keys that I worked for that a grip should never be seen sitting down. I don't care if it's an 18-hour day in the swamp. You never take a break. You're always doing something. And that just overbearing, management style. I watched you because the grass was way greener in the electric department. All those shows I was on, just getting pummeled by these keys. And I'm watching you build a crew as you started as a gaffer. And you guys had a blast every day. And
Yeah.
that's why, I was extended several invitations. Hey, come over to the light side, get away
Yeah.
from the dark side. And that's why I said, you are a person that I completely modeled that after. In a lot of ways, both you personally gave me hope that at our age, being in the same business, having the same set of circumstances, that I could move forward. And now I have met and married a wonderful woman and am an old dad with toddlers, at 51 years old. But professionally, I started rig keying right after, around, after about 6, 7 years in the business. And I completely modeled what I watched you do. And I built this incredible crew. And these guys are best friends of mine to this day. And we still work together on different projects. So, is there anybody that you kind of watched, or a combination of people over the years?
Yes. The people some of the gaffers and chief lighting technicians I've worked with in the past. I mean, I've had some tough ones and tough best boys that I worked with or under. But there's two gaffers that I have so much respect for, still consider friends. Um, I did a show called Dukes of Hazzard, the movie, back in early 2000s, and the gaffer from New York, a guy named John Velez, and I was I think it was just two of us, one of two local set lighting technicians that got hired. They brought everyone else in, and same with the grip side, and they just, it's 52 when, or IA 52 comes in, New York crew comes in to Louisiana or to the South. You have an East Coast and West Coast kind of, they have their different ways of doing it, different terminology. So I'm trying to grasp what, they call equipment, different things.
Yeah.
But that crew really took me under their wing and helped me along. And I learned a lot from that. And John Velez was the gaffer on that. And he just such a great person to me. And he very level-headed, would offer any information. All you had to do is ask, or just, he would help me along. He still does that. To his credit, also, when Katrina hit, the South shut down. There was no filming going on. That, the Louisiana, Mississippi were just the devastation. The whole industry shut down. Velez reached out to me and offered me a job in New York to come do a couple of movies up there. I at the time I did not do it. I kind of regret that I didn't do it because I could have gotten a 52 card, I-52 card, which would have been nice. But it's that respect that Velez extended that to me, because at that time I opened the doors. Our union opened the doors in all these different jurisdictions to allow Louisiana, Mississippi IA members to come work, so we could try to stay afloat.
Yeah.
So Velez is one, and Dan Cornwall, the first project I did with him was Mr. 3000. And it was the same thing. They came to came to Louisiana, New Orleans, and only hired a few locals. And I happened to be one of those. But I was still working. That was the time I was still at a production company. It was the second production company I worked in Mississippi, but I would take a leave of absence. I'd get offered these movies. I was a full-time producer AD for the company, but I would get asked to do a movie, and I would take a leave of absence to go, for 2 to 4 months to go do a project in Louisiana. And it was great because for me, it was rejuvenation. I'd go see all these new toys, all these different things, and then go back to, bring all this new insight to the production world, commercial world in Mississippi. But Dan Cornwall and Dale, his best boy, who I still talk to, if I want to mirror my ways around, it's Dan Cornwall. I mean, he was so patient with me and with the crew, and just a wealth of information, and would help you out. So when I grow up, I want to be like Dan, and he's still doing, he does big stuff. He's a really smart man. So much respect for him. And his best boy Dale is still with him. They're still together.
Yeah.
So really good team.
It's amazing how much difference just kindness.
Yeah.
The work is the work. But
yeah. And it's that patience, and I hope that I offer that with the people I work with, that, I don't know everything. But if there's a little bit of information that I know, and I can offer something like that, some insight to someone I'm standing next to, I absolutely will. I'm not going to hoard all this, and not, because people paid it forward to me, and I want to return that, with the John Velez's and Dan Cornwall's and other people that I've worked with, cinematographers I've worked with. They've all been patient with me and offered me insight and information, and I just want to do the same for the next crew coming along. So I hope I do that. I hope people see that I try to do that.
If you are a non-Hollywood based crew member, I don't care what, local you're in, you hear, well, in Hollywood, we do it this way. And, automatically I have watched, even recently in the last year or two, 400 local guys that are incredible keys be passed over in favor just because the guys, the other person's from Hollywood. And instead of getting into that debate or whatever, what has always worked for me is if I just put my head down and do my job and show somebody, hey man, just give us a chance,
Yeah.
And that
comment on that. It is something like like you said, the IA members that come in from out of town,
there's a prejudice. There is.
There is, and and I'm not going to call it any particular IA, but it's one of those things where they'll come into a smaller market, and I'm leading up to something as I give this backstory. Is they'll come in and say, well, that's not how you do it. This is how we do it, and we call it whatever.
Yeah.
That's what it's called. And cut to, that was in Louisiana, especially in young film industry, the pre-tax incentive and, early tax incentive days, they're still bringing in a lot of their head of departments.
Yeah.
And so they come in, and I won't say an arrogance, maybe some, it was an arrogance, like, this is it. No, you're not doing it right. This is how we do it. Cut to now, where here I am sitting in a different market.
Yep.
And I've been traveling around quite a bit the last several years, and so I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be that guy, that crew that comes in like, hang on, guys, that ain't how you do it. this is how you do it, and trying to, I don't, that's the last thing I want to do is walk into a different market because I want to learn from them. How do you, in like New Mexico, I did a movie out here last year. I learn a lot. I learn something new every day anyway.
Yeah.
I absolutely pause and reflect on my day and make sure that I gain some awareness or knowledge of that day. And same thing, even coming out here, it's like how you'll have a windstorm. It just comes up. It's like, so I got to think of how to light, out here,
Yep.
towards the west out in these open fields, and you'll have sandstorms that
Yeah.
just you have no indication it's going to happen. You just look way off in the distance and see this dark cloud. Next thing you know, you got a sandstorm.
Yep.
Well, you got to take cover for all that stuff. So it's a different way of working, compared to Louisiana or Mississippi. You don't have those kind of things. So
Yeah. I mean, show we did together at Greyhound. I had an experience on that, kind of talking the Hollywood versus everybody else. Was elected shop steward on that show. I was working for you. This is a huge show. At least seemed like to me. It's Tom Hanks,
yeah,
Shelley DPing. It was great. And one of the AD staff, they called Grace every day. And I kept going to it and said, man, a lot of the crew were starting to come to me and go, they can't do this. And for anybody, not to get caught in the weeds of explaining it, at 6 hours in, it's time for lunch. And if you're in the middle of a setup and you want to complete the actors and makeup, whatever, for whatever reason, you need a couple more takes. We at the union will give a grace period, but it's, 15 minutes or 30 minutes. And you give them that without penalizing them, giving them a meal penalty of $12, or I think the first one's $7 or $8, and then the second one's 12. Well, they just kept doing it every day. And I finally went to him like, man, you can't do this. And he's like, yes, we can. And he just kept saying, quoting the Hollywood agreement. And I kept saying, man, that's not the contract we're on. Long story short, I had to get our local involved. I had to get our BA involved with the producer and say, look, the contract we're on, this area standards, it is not the spirit of the rule. You can call it from time, because they were starting to change lenses and even change the shot a little bit. And they just wanted to complete the entire setup,
right.
and ultimately, like, the guy got super heated with me and got in my face, and I just kind of walked away like, okay, I'm not going to have an altercation over this. And I called the hall and said, hey, you guys are going to have to handle this. And the key grip on that show was as legendary a local lady, like if you called central casting and said, I want a key grip, Bob Babin is who they would send you. And Bob came to me because he knew I was a grip pretending to be an electrician on that show. And he came up and he's like, what's all this about? Why can't we complete our setups? Blah, blah, blah. And I pulled out the contract and I showed him in the contract the absolute, the spirit of the role for the area standard. I said, Bob, we're working off this contract, not the Hollywood agreement. And he goes, I'm sorry. I wasn't aware. I got your back. And that was it, but it can really be, that's where those difficulties play out a lot. Anyway,
I do remember those days.
you do.
I do.
that was a fantastic show. We could probably talk about that show. Well, that kind of leads into the next question of it's kind of a two-parter. Do you prefer a particular size or type of project? And kind of tagged onto that, would you rather have a DP that's super involved? Like in that case, Shelley, that we also did, I think you'd done more than that with him, but I did Percy Jackson 2 and Greyhound with him. And I think, did you do one more with him?
I've done, I think 5 with Shelley.
Oh, gotcha.
So, yeah.
So I totally did my research.
No. Yeah, I've done well. And Percy we did the first Percy Jackson shoot.
Yes.
And then we did reshoots,
Yes.
which is what everyone has seen. But the first Percy Jackson 2 portion of the project, interesting story there was, you might know this. I got called they were coming, Shelley, who I knew who he was, but had never worked with him. They were coming to town. This movie, Percy Jackson 2, was being shot in Canada, but they were coming down and going to shoot at the Six Flags
Yeah.
for 8 days. I think it was 8 days.
Boy, it
And
turned out to be more than that.
yeah. And so they're coming down and so they're in production, in pre-production up in Canada, and they're coming down to just scout Six Flags, and they're going to shoot it in a couple of months. And so they need a gaffer to come and walk with Shelley in production and make notes and, kind of devise a plan. But in the back of my mind, I knew I wasn't going to do this job because I knew someone of Shelley's clout was going to bring in his guy from Canada that's doing the project. And why would you work with, little me? So I went on the scout, and Shelley is well prepared. He had the plot made for Six Flags already. He had a
Yep.
nice draft of it. And so I'm walking through, I'm like, oh yeah, and 34 18Ks or whatever it was, backlighting the wooden roller coaster. And then try to get the Ferris wheel on, and the main aisle, I forget what it's called.
The
But anyway,
grandstand or whatever.
yeah. And so they're going to bring in all these other amusement rides, and none of this stuff made the movie, so it's kind of hard. People that might be familiar with the movie, you didn't see this part, but it was huge. It was a pretty big set. Yeah, we had 480 plants, and we put those around the park, and then we dropped transformers all around the amusement park to power all this other stuff. So, but anyway, before then, I'm doing the scout, and then there's speculation that they might add 2 days in New Orleans and do this boat work.
Yeah.
And so we talked about that. But then I was like, and so I'm making notes, and knowing that I'm going to hand this off to someone else. And then Shelley and I hit it off, and Shelley offers me the New Orleans portion of it. I was absolutely, I'd love to do this. And so I got offered that show. I was offered another show, which was at the time, the producer was offering this show. The DOP, I had not met with the DOP yet. So it was one of those things where I took the sure thing, which was also a big project because Percy Jackson, that franchise at the time was well respected, and so and Shelley, absolutely. So I did that, but that portion of the show, they just kept putting more sets in the New Orleans, Louisiana portion of the project. So that 8 days turned into 10, turned into 16, turned into 20 something for the first portion of it. So we ended up shooting 20 something days.
It was brutal. All nights.
All nights. And a lot of that was at Six Flags, lit up a good portion of that park. And that one takeaway from that set was I didn't know this. And the way the set was rigged, some of the amusement rides were practical. We had a commercial electrician company come out and test the wiring to a lot of the Ferris wheel and some of the buildings and the neon and all that other stuff. And they said we ran power from our generators to them, and they were able to clean it up to where everything could run. The Ferris wheel could turn on and that sort of thing. And so, but as we're shooting, so you're in the main area. Again, none of this made the release. But so you're in the middle of the amusement rides, and they want to see where the magic cloak lands on the control panel of the ride, therefore turns everything on the park.
Yep.
But they want it to be in sections. And it's at dusk. So, and I learn about this about
one shot.
40 minutes to an hour. Like, hey, can we do this to where we pan, 300 degrees, whatever it was, and see all these things turn on as the camera gets to that zone. And so Shelley comes to me and asks me if I can do it. And I was like, and only portion of it was like on on the console. Everything else, a lot of those was different breakers around the park. And I was like, yes. And I'm like, all right, well, we got to do it in like 23 minutes because we
Yeah.
got the sun's going to be right here. We need a magic hour. I was like, okay, all right, yes, yes, I think we can do it. I think we can do it. And so, got the guy, spread the crew out and
I
like, all
was
right,
I was on a breaker. I
yeah.
remember.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right. So we did zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, zone 4. I think it was 5 zones, if I remember correctly. And whenever on the radio, I would call it out, those 1 to 3 people in that zone would turn on their switches or breakers. And then part of it was the console. So whatever zone I would call out, people had their action. And we did it one take. And I just remember I was sitting there like, I mean, sweating bullets because I was like, oh shit, I want to get this right.
Yeah.
Right. And if we don't get it now, I don't know when we're
Yep.
going to get it.
Yep.
And everyone is watching and they're coming to me like, they're all waiting on me to get it organized. And the sun's dropping. Are we too late? And I remember Shelly standing next to me like, well, Bob, I was like, yes, sir. Hang on one moment. I'm looking at my plot. I'm trying to figure all this, get everything figured out. All right. Ran a quick test. And I looked at Shelly and I said, Shelly, I think we're ready. He's like, you think so? I was like, yes, sir. And so we did it, roll camera, called it, and then start panning. I'm like, and go 1, and go 2, and go 3. And we did it. And I was like, holy shit, it worked,
It
right?
worked.
It worked. And I remember Shelly turning to me and telling me thank you. Anyway, I think that was like that turning point in our friendship. At least it was that admiration that I got, that he took a moment to thank me for it. And I appreciated that because it was stressful. You got the whole company, 115 people standing around waiting on you to figure this out.
A
And
lot of money being held up.
a lot of money for me to sit, but anyway, it did work. And so anyway, that was the first part of Percy Jackson 2. And then I got a call from Shelly about 2 months later, month and a half later. He's like, hey, Bob, how's it going? I was like, going good. I said, how's Percy Jackson looking? It's good. He said, well, I'm coming back to town for a job and I wanted to see if you're available. And I was like, we talked about when it was. And so, yeah, he goes, we're going to do some reshoots. I said, let me guess. We want to light up the Six Flags again. He goes, part of it. I was like, I thought he was shitting me. I was like, okay, all right. And sure
Only
enough,
this time it was in January. It was freezing
it
cold
was
for
freezing
nights.
cold. Yes. Yeah. The first time it was hot and muggy and mosquitoes, and this time it's freezing cold.
Yep.
So then that's what made the movie, but it all takes place inside the center of that wooden coaster. And they just did some rewrites and, tested it and found they need to do it. And so that was that was Shelley, and I've done other projects since. So,
Yeah.
and I still consider Shelley a good friend of mine. We stay in touch. So he's reached out to me a few times for projects I regretfully haven't been able to work with him on, because we just have a really good rapport. And he's a very detail oriented DOP, and which I love, but he also allows for that little bit of collaboration too.
Yeah.
So
there's no substitute for what happened in that moment of pulling that off. When you're able to do pull something off like that, and it establishes a trust that is always going to be there, and there's just no substitute for that. It's a great feeling.
Yeah.
So not to over dramatize, but now that you've kind of reached the level you're at, achieved the dream, so to speak, of where you are in your career. And I have to credit this question. I've asked a few friends of mine who will hopefully be future people I have conversations with on this podcast. But one of my buddies who gets interviewed a lot, a buddy of mine named Mark, who's a guitar player, I asked him and several other guys, what's a question that, like, in interviews you wish that you got asked, that you never get asked? And so this is his question. Now that you've achieved your dream, so to speak, where has it met or not met your expectations? Like, what looks different than you thought it would, and what looks like you thought it would?
Um, I mean, the dream, what have I achieved so far, and knowing what I wanted, where I wanted to be or aspire to be, I'm still got a long road ahead of me. Uh, I've been extremely fortunate, and I'm grateful in that regard. But and I might deter a little bit from your question,
That's
but
okay.
it's definitely making me reflect on it. I don't know. I'm trying to have some
It's a big
words.
question,
It's a really big question.
because you
Um,
can go the personal route, the
yeah,
family, the balance. You can go, strictly work based.
yeah. I mean, yeah, it's a good thing. That's a good point. Talking about the balance of career versus family.
Yeah, I want it. That's kind of I have that further down the list to
Yeah.
discuss, but go for it, whatever you want.
Um, One, there's a lot of things of with that question of trying to, where what I've achieved and living this dream and knowing that I've still got a long road ahead of me. Hopefully, I've got a lot of aspirations for sure. But, the fact that you've got friends and family that support you, that's a huge one.
Yeah,
Um, and I've got to give credit to that for sure, because it's this, like we know, it's a hard career
yeah,
path, be it, I think, film industry or the music world,
yeah,
whatever, being on the road, period. Um, so you got to have family and friends that support you. And, for us, we have such huge bonds with fellow filmmakers because we're with each other 12 to 16 hours a day. We see them more than we see our own family. We communicate with them more than we communicate with our family for sure. And that's where you create these incredible bonds and friendships. But your family and friends have to be patient with that. So,
yeah.
um, anyway, so that's one thing that I know I didn't answer your question correctly, but it's definitely made me think. Um, you know what I what I'm grateful for and what I've achieved. So,
Yeah. Well, let's just go that direction with it because it's one of the things I was going to ask later on is, the forever difficult question of work life balance, which in our business is a near impossibility, you know, um, and kind of in addition with that, maybe what do you do or what have you learned to do? Because I know, at least for me, I had to do it wrong a whole lot and then slowly figure out how to get back. Like for me, I worked up to being a department head or being a rigging key, and I did that for about 6 years, and then when a lot of the work left, where I live, I didn't want to chase it. I had a girl in high school playing soccer year round and cheerleading and another in middle school. And I didn't want to, I was missing enough being here and being a rig and key. I didn't want to go to, out of town and work and miss all of it. So I consciously and, very deliberately took a step back. Um, and of course took the financial hit that goes with that, but I made the decision to not be a key anymore, at least for now. So, as far as how have you learned to be as balanced as you can um, in that, you know?
yeah. I mean, to give some backstory, like you just offered up. I mean, coming up in this business, young me, that was, I was 25 when I had my first son, Taylor, and that's it's a young age.
Yeah,
It's a young age to have kids, and trying to, at the time I just started, I was working for the production company, but I also had one or two other jobs, so I usually had 2 to 3 jobs at all times, just trying to make ends meet because financially. And it was a struggle. And then as a new parent, nothing prepares you to being a parent. I mean, you could read all the books, try to prepare yourself, but the day that baby is born, your world changes. And there's no going back. So, and then all I can think of is I want to provide for this
Yeah.
kid, my son. I got to provide for him. And so I kept struggling, pushing, trying to get work, trying to stay busy. You don't tell people no. You're afraid if you don't answer the phone or if you tell that person no that you can't do that job, they're going to go down the list, and then next
Yeah.
time you're further down the list,
Yep.
and so you stop getting calls. And so that is, as a freelancer too, that is a very frightening thing, especially a young experienced filmmaker. It is that is a real thing, anxiety and struggle that how am I going to balance this, stay busy. And then, cut to 3 years later, I have my next son, and a little bit further in my career, but I'm still struggling. It's still hard, but I'm traveling more because at that time, um, we had living in Mississippi, but I was working in New Orleans. And so here I am getting off at work at five in the morning, Saturday morning,
Yep.
trying to make it to my son's birthday party. I mean, I remember this, drinking, energy drinks, struggling to stay awake, and getting to I remember it, I mean, like it was last week, getting to his birthday party. And I mean, I was a walking zombie, but I wanted to be there.
Yep.
And, my sons probably don't remember any of this, but, there was a lot of efforts made to try to be present. And it's a hard thing, and I still struggle with it today
Yeah.
because I've got, my daughter's 8, um, and my boys being out of the house, but I still try to be present for her too, because I feel like I missed so much with the boys. I tried to make it to as many football and baseball practices and games and soccer. I tried to be there.
Yep.
Um, but there are plenty of, theater shows I didn't make it to, but I made it to as many as I could. But I feel like deep down back in my head, they only know the ones I'd missed because they looked in the audience and didn't see dad there. And so that still that haunts me.
It does.
Um, and so, but I wish they knew that how big an effort I made to be there.
Yeah.
Um, and it's that, and then like using that scenario where I drove in 5 in the morning, Saturday mornings, 3.5 hours on energy drink, um, to make a birthday party. And then I'd do the birthday party, literally drove straight to the party,
Yeah.
go to the birthday party, and then go home, go to bed. He's wanting to play with all these toys, and dad's in the back trying to take a nap. Yeah. And then I got to leave again at, Sunday night at 5 o'clock because I got a 6 a.m. call Monday morning.
Yeah.
And anyway, so there's still that struggle now. But I try to make that time where I make it home every other weekend. And even if it's that Friday night where I'll try to get somebody to cover me so I
Yeah.
can make a flight if I can, just so I can try to be a little more present. And then the times that I am off, you know, at this moment, we're just coming out of the back end of the strikes. So I've had some time off, like a lot of
Yeah.
film industry people. I've been fortunate. I stayed fairly busy, but still had plenty of time, more time than I usually do off. But that time is having that, being able to connect with my family has been really nice. You know,
Everything.
going to
Yeah.
soccer practices and violin lessons, and you know, eating lunch with my middle child. And anyway, it's just there's a lot to it, but it's trying to find that balance.
Yeah.
And since I'm later in my career, I feel like I can take a pause for
Yeah.
a few weeks or whatever. I don't have to take that job because that's going to be somewhere out of the country, and my family doesn't want to go out of the country again right now. So it's like, all right, let's at least stay in the country and fly away. Um, and so uh, it's a conscious effort now that I actually do try to keep those connections, and, you know, even if it's just text or call, talk to my boys, try to do it daily, you
Yeah.
know, when time arises, or when we were able to make that time.
I have a needle point I found. I don't even know where I got it years ago. It was around the time I had just started Rig King, and it says if you want to be a part of your children's memories tomorrow, you have to be a part of their life today. And it was I think I got it in like a Cracker Barrel or something, but it brought me to tears when I saw it standing there. It's just so simple. And in my life in general, it has taken me, and I think part of this is because the music business, which I spent all of my 20s and half my 30s in, is very similar in nature, and the kind of beating you take, and you become this almost robot of, they own you. You have to do the work. And has taken me, and still learning this into my 50s, but into my 40s, to really start setting some boundaries and realizing how much of life has already gone by. And I remember the first few times that, like, I'm on a scout and we're looking at the schedule and I'm like, oh, damn, that week is my daughter's birthday, or this week, we have this hardline trip planned or whatever. And I'm smiling and nodding when they're telling me all the things they need from me on that week. But in the back of my head, I'm like, I'm not going to be here. I just started drawing hard lines. And if you're going to fire me, you're going to fire me. But, you know, when this show's over, most of the time, we work for we work for people that hire us back. But I have found, at least the last 7 or 8, 10 years of my career, and you were one of these people that I've worked for, that just know, I mean, I have 4 children. I'm going to be a part of their lives. I'm not going to miss, the show I've been on the last few years. We're supposed to start back in May, and one of my oldest daughters graduating nursing school, and her pinning ceremony is the middle of May. I'm not missing that, for anything. And,
Yeah.
And for years I did, for years. And, it's it's always a difficult, thing to try to find that balance. But, anyway,
It is. And I think that, part of it now, like you said, we've grown up in this business, in this industry, and the struggles that we've had, but also the respect and knowledge we've gained over the years as well,
yeah,
allows for us to say, I I need this moment. And that's what I try to encourage with my crew too. If you've got a family event or something like that, you get the time off. Just talk to the best boys. Let's figure it all out. I don't remember no one ever said that to me. I never felt like I could take that time off.
never.
But I want anybody in my crew, if you feel like that you need to go be a part, or, you're whatever it is,
Yeah.
leave early so you can go have dinner with your wife. Please do that. Absolutely. Because
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I could do it growing up, growing up in the industry.
Yeah.
I
Go
want to make
scout the cable runs. Go scout the
exactly.
cable runs.
Yep, exactly. So where you get to leave a little bit early and go spend time with your kids. So
Yeah. I'm going to make it a little bit more lighthearted here towards the end. Well, after this one, what would you change about film work currently? Like, what if, 1, 2, 3 things? Because I know we could sit here and do hours about what to change,
yes.
but like top couple of ideas, what would you change about it?
Um, the work hours, the time you're away from your family,
Always number one.
always number one. And
Why
and
do
I,
we have to be on these ridiculous schedules always?
yes, and believe me, I get it. Let me clarify that. I understand why producers want to say we have to do a 14 or 16-hour day because of we need to shoot this location out, or we only have this actor for X amount of days, and so these 3 days that we have this actor, they all got to be 14-hour days. There's few days like that I could see being lenient on. It's the other where they, production, at least, and to clarify that in the States, because
Yes.
it's not like this in other countries,
Yeah.
but in the States, they schedule a 12-hour day. So
Minimum.
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 So, and for people, listeners that might not be that familiar with the film industry in the States, is say I got a 6 a.m. call Monday morning. I know I am not leaving work until 6:30 p.m. because
At
I've
the
got 12
earliest.
at the early,
Absolute earliest.
because I've got a 12-hour day, and then they the lunch 30-minute lunch break, so 12 and a half elapsed hours. And that's assuming you don't have a pre-call where you come in 30 minutes to an hour to, get your carts pushed in or whatever, or if you don't have to wrap out of there. So it's usually a 12-hour shoot call. And then you got to do all the, either pre-call or wrap out. But so that is probably one of the number one things I would change. And because I've been on projects here. There's one studio that does 10 and a half elapsed hours. That's their
There in New
day.
Mo.
No, it
Oh, in the
was
States. I gotcha.
in the States, meaning like Marvel's MO is they will do a 10 and a half hour elapsed day. So you don't break for lunch. And or well, the show I did with them recently, we did break for lunch, and that's where it turned into a 10 and a half hour day. But you're not going to go over. If you do the few days that you might go over, you go over 10 minutes. So, and you can actually you have a life. You feel like you truly have a life,
Yeah.
and you're still working 50 hours a week, even on that schedule. And so you
And
still,
it feels like a part-time job compared to
yeah,
what we've done.
yeah,
We normally do.
absolutely. And so you're working, and Friday's usually not a late day either. And now cut to the jobs I've done overseas in Eastern Europe and stuff. It's a 10-hour day. You do not go over 10 hours. Um, the projects I've worked on over there, the few times you do have to go past 10 hours, they ask the crew, and it's, if you can stay an extra 30 minutes, we would appreciate it. But if you already have dinner plans, we understand. We'll see you tomorrow. And I was like, I'm like, what do you mean? I can leave if I want to leave. If I got dinner plans, I can leave. But the other was another project I did in Eastern Europe. That was the one of the projects I did over there. But then another project I did, uh, I had, it was a New Zealand AD, and he had never done anything in the States. And we were talking about it, and 10-hour day. And I remember it was like 9 hours and 52 minutes into our day. And the director wants to do one more take. And just a little bit of a re-rig. He said, you got 8 minutes. Can you get it done in 8 minutes? He's like, no, I don't think we can. I think it's probably going to be more like 20 to 30 minutes. He goes, I don't think we can get it. I don't think we get it. He goes, we got to wrap it, you know,
Yeah.
whatever time it was, 10 hours, 10 hours in our day. We have to wrap it this time. And he's like, well, I know, but we're here. King goes, no, that's it. All right, guys, that's a wrap. And the AD calls wrap. I was like, holy. So that's the thing. And it's like, you don't go over. And so I talked to him about it because I saw that they were leading this crew, leading this production, and you don't go over 10 hours. And I said, how can you do it? He goes, Bob, he said, I don't know how you all do it in the States working 12-hour days. I was like, that's on a good one,
Yeah.
Um, he goes, because here, if you go over 10 hours, and just to there were a few instances where we did go over 10 minutes or 15 minutes on that particular project, but it was so few. Uh, and so he said, if I went over 10 hours several times a week, he said, this crew you see here, they won't be here next week. He said, they'll go work on the other show that's sticking to 10 hours. And so that's where I'm like, wait, why don't we take that mindset? Why don't we say it, even if it's 12 hours, let's just say it's 12-hour days. You're not going over 12 hours. And the producers and the ADs and the directors they have that mindset. You're not going over 12. And if everybody would stick by those rules, that guideline, it would be but I talked to some younger filmmakers about it, because then we'll do pre-lights on Saturdays or scouts on over the weekend. So then it turns into 6 or 7 day weeks. And a lot of times if we have to do that, a lot of the younger crew want those hours. They're like, "Oh, Bob, if you need somebody to come in, or if you need anybody, pre-call or whatever, I can do that for you. I'll do that or with you." And because they want those hours.
Yeah.
And I remember those days. I wanted that OT as
Absolutely.
well.
Yeah.
But I'm in a different mindset now that I want to spend time with my family more than I want to make what turns into being just a few extra dollars. I'd much rather be at the playground with my kids. If I turn back the clock, I'd have been able to do that more with my boys.
Yeah.
Being more aware at that birthday party, those sort of things, instead of spending so many hours.
Yeah.
I mean, we average 74 hours a week,
Yep.
on first unit. It's hard.
The world I've been in the last 3 years, I've been, just working as a rig and grip, and we've worked 6 and 7 day weeks every single week.
Yeah.
And, minimum 70 to usually 80 hours a week every week, which I don't mind as much when I'm on location and away from my family anyway. It still is just so exhausting and breaks the body down. And we could probably do a couple of hours just on the physical toll
Yes.
that the
And we
work
probably
is taking
we
on our.
should make more people.
We
Yeah,
should.
yeah. But since we're on this topic, I do want to share one other thing. Is one of the projects I was on over in Eastern Europe. There was a gaffer on the crew as well, and I was texting him some information. I was the chief lighting technician, and we carried a local gaffer and local crew. And I was texting him over the weekend about some things that we needed to manage the following week. And I'd sent him 2 or 3 texts and no response. And then mid-morning on, I think it was a Sunday, he finally responds. And he said, "Bob, just so you know, it is the weekend and we're not supposed to be working, but I did receive these texts and all that will be ready for us on Monday." And it's just this European lifestyle is you don't work over the weekend. You're not supposed to
I know.
text or call people about work over the weekend. That is your time with your family.
We are
And
so broken. We're
yeah,
so
and
broken
and I'm
here.
like, can we bring this to the States to where you don't feel, and so that's where I don't like to ask my rigging crew to work over the weekend. Can we not try to figure out how to rig these locations Monday through Friday?
Yeah.
Because I feel like you can abuse me Monday through Friday, anytime in that 12-hour day. Abuse me. But let me also have that time with my family so I can wash clothes, go to the grocery store, go to the playground, go see a soccer game, whatever it might be, where I'm not feeling like I got to work on a lighting plot or rig a location.
And especially as a department head and as a gaffer, to be able to set that boundary of, like, I remember I did a series for several years as a rigging key, and my phone, I would get 100 emails over a weekend and constantly be getting texts from other department heads. Effects needs this, this department needs this. Can you have this ready first thing Monday morning? And I'm like, it's Saturday, it's Sunday. I'm with my kids.
Yeah.
And to be able to start to set those boundaries, that wear and tear, like, now I am so happy just being a worker bee and just being a rigger, showing up, putting my tools on, working all day. And I'm happy to be a gang boss and push a crew and problem solve and figure out with the equipment we have how to do something without having to bother the boss. I'm happy to do all of that. But when I leave work, I leave work. And to me, it took the drastic measure of not being a key anymore. But for you guys that are still in that, learning how to set those boundaries, it's something that I was never good at. They essentially own you from the minute you sign on a show until you're done.
Yeah.
And it's a broken model for sure.
It is. And, staying on this topic, one of the things, the question was, what would we change? That's another thing I would suggest is a 6-day or 7-day work week, it has to be a vote. It's not just, oh, we didn't get this, so we're coming in
Yeah.
Saturday.
Yeah.
It's, are you available to come in on
Yeah.
Saturday?
The
Not
producer
that,
approved it, so we're doing it. Yeah.
yeah, not that it's like, no, I've got a birthday party with my son, or I've got family coming in town.
Yeah, or
Now all of a sudden,
anything. I want to
anything,
take a nap.
yeah,
I
I
need to
got to
do my
watch.
laundry.
Yes, any of these things, and it's like, but it's like, no, you have to be here. It's like, mm, let's set that boundary where it has to be a request, not a mandate.
Yeah.
And I do this. People that worked with me know that if they come to us, it's a question. I ask my crew if you can come in. You, if you can't, you can't. We'll be down. And there's been a couple shows where my crew members had other things, and we were down crew members.
Yeah.
And I go to the ADs and I say, just so you know, they're like, well, yeah, but we got one show in particular. The producer came to me and was like, well, no, but we have to work that because such and such. I'm like, I don't demand that of my crew.
No.
It's a request, and it was a question, and the answer they gave me is they're not available. So
All right. I'm going to rapid fire through a few here towards the end. Well, real quick, it's just a question I get asked. People find out you're in the film business. They want to know, of all the actors you've worked with, who are the good ones and who are the bad ones. I'm not asking you who the bad ones are, but if very short list, because for me, honestly, it's one hand that I can list the ones that were uh, either just a delight to work with and I didn't even really know them before then, or the ones that are a very well known name that lived up to the billing and were truly who people think they are. So anyone that you would name?
yes, because I do get asked that quite a bit. Who's the favorite person you ever worked with, or who, the first one is I did a movie. I was an SLT on Runaway Jury in New Orleans, and it had Dustin Hoffman in it. And that man, Oscar winning, just extremely personable, such a great person. He'd walk in, playing music on a boombox, getting the energy up as he comes on set. Hey, hey, and saying hey to people, calling crew members by their name. And that just has, sat with me for years. And I've told that story numerous times. It's
Yeah.
like, man, what just a great person to be around. Just this really nice energy. And also, uh, another one would be Tom Hanks when we did Greyhound. Same thing, the same energy. And,
Yep.
uh, the things that all the positive things that you might hear of Tom Hanks, every one of them is true.
Absolutely
He
every one
is
of them.
that man. He communicates with the crew. He tries to learn crew members' name. He plays, we have music. He played music on the PA system on the stage, just trying to build this energy up. And there's just a really nice collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell those stories to some of my actor friends to share with them that goes such a long way. The
It's
fact that
everything.
that actor wants to, it's not just blinders on, walking the set. And I mean, there to do a job, just like we all are. The other
Yeah.
80 to 120 people standing around are there to do a job. But we also are there. Everyone, I say everyone, 90 something percent of the people that are standing on that stage are there because they have a creative take. They have a creative vibe. They need this creative energy and to expel it in some way. And we share that with one another as fellow filmmakers in
Yeah.
whatever craft that you're doing, hair, makeup, whatever, grip electric. And so for us all to be cordial and interact with one another and collaborate. And so to have an actor of, a certain caliber, and honestly, any caliber, any actor that comes in, I think it's nice for them to learn crew members' names and be cordial to the crew.
Yeah.
Same thing for me when we have a new stand-in, or a new day play actor or background person or whatever. And I
Yeah.
know that we've been shooting that because being on set, it's kind of a an interesting vibe because we're all kind of friends. There's a lot of stuff happening that if you're not that familiar, sometimes the stand-ins or background or whatever are not that knowledgeable of everything that's going on. And we're all on headsets. And so there's a lot of things that are being communicated that these other people new to set aren't aware of. And so I will go out and try to personally introduce myself. Hey, what's your name? And welcome them. So they at least know one person's name on set.
Yeah.
So then they can have someone that's like, oh, there's Bob. And so if they ever have a question like, Bob, what's that mark on the floor for? Or why is that guy, whatever, have a question, they can turn to me and ask me that question
Yeah.
and try to help them so they have a better experience on set and learn something while they're there. So I feel like if all crew members did that, just because like I was leading up to is, or what I mentioned earlier, because we've been on set. This little family's been shooting this, project for 20 something days, and this person walked in. It's their first hour,
Yeah.
and they're like, what the hell is going on? What's all this stuff happening? So it's trying to befriend those people and ease them into it.
On the
So that
camera test day on Greyhound, we were that film. If anybody's not familiar, I think 90% of the film takes place in the pilot house of a World War II destroyer, and so we had essentially one set for most of the film, and it was the pilot house was built on a massive gimbal that effects had built, and on a sound stage, and so on the camera test day, I had a little workbench set up in our staging area, which was pretty close to the ladder or the stairs going up to the gimbal. And I was soldering some light disc. You had me doing some creating some LED fixtures to use handheld. And I was sitting, with my magnifying glass because I can't see, soldering and trying to work on this thing. And I felt the presence of somebody kind of walk up. And I saw these hands on the corner of my little workbench. And I was in the middle of soldering, and he just stood there and watched. And when I took the gun off of the solder and went to clean it up, I just heard, "I hope you don't mind me watching you." And I looked up, and it was Tom, and he stuck his hand out, and he goes, "My name's Tom." And I'm like, "Hi, Tom. I'm Brent." That was on camera test first day, and he would walk by me, any time, not every day, but the days that he would walk by, he would go, "Brent," or "Hi, Brent," or "How are we today?" He was always just so happy. And then one other little story about him, because he's at the top of the list. The others was Tim Blake Nelson, I did a show with, and he was just a fantastic human. And Ben Foster, I was a best boy on a show that Ben Foster did. And he would come sit. He asked permission to come aboard the grip truck, like day 2. And I said, "Sure, come on in." And he came in and sat with me, and I had a picture on the work box or on the tool lock up in there of, my dad was in the coal industry for 40 something years. And I had snapped a pic visiting my dad of some guys on a man trip coming out from a 10-hour shift underground, on the little, you have to lay down and drive this cart, through a seam deep a mile underground. And they were coming out in the afternoon, and I just snapped a photo, and they're all covered in soot and everything. And he was just staring at this picture. And I explained he's like, "Where did this come from? I need to know this picture," and I told him, "Well, my dad's a coal miner, blah, blah, blah. I took this picture when I was visiting him last year. And I have it up here that any day, no matter how bad, because we can have some terrible days doing what we do. But if I look at that, my day's never, ever that bad. I'm making a movie at the end of the day." And he put his arm around me, and he was like, "You and I are going to be good friends." So he was a total lunch pail guy. Like, that's what I call those guys. They just show up ready to do their work. They're not bitching about circumstances or anything. And he came and hung out on the truck with me all the time. But I have one more, the Tom story. We had done a lighting change. I think we were going in for coverage or something on one of the scenes on the gimbal, and you were slave driving us, had us in there, working hard. And moving one little tiny LED light or something. And I was coming off the gimbal as they were about to call pictures up, and they were going to raise the bridge. There was a bridge you had to walk across, a steel deck bridge hung from chain motors to because the gimbal moved when they were rolling. And I walked by and I had a shirt on from a football team, an English football team, Aston Villa. And I walked past Tom's little, tent where he had his captain's chair. And I got about 10 feet past him and I hear his booming voice come out. Is that an Aston Villa shirt? And I just kind of stopped dead in my tracks, and everybody stopped because of how loud he said it. And he came out of the tent and walked up, and I said, yes, it is. He goes, well, I need to know. Well, why do you have on an Aston Villa shirt? So I explained to him in a little more detail than this, that I had been in the music business. I'd toured with a band from Birmingham, which is where that club is. They were huge fans, so I've always followed the club. And then he said, what band? And I said, well, the band, sir, I'm sure you're familiar with them. They're called Napalm Death. He goes, Napalm Death, of course. He goes, their first 3 records are great. After that, they really kind of jumped the shark. And then he goes on to tell me, of course, he didn't know who they were. He was just riffing on it. And he went on to tell me how he became a fan of them and is a huge supporter and goes to their games when he's over there. And I tell this story to a singer from a pretty well-known band that's a good friend of mine, and he tells it on a podcast. I wasn't aware of this, a pretty big podcast. And a week or so later, I'm on Instagram, see the guy who has this podcast, and he posts a picture. I have it right up here. I don't want to pull it off the wall and knock all my stuff over, but it's a picture of Tom Hanks with a Napalm Death shirt on. And I'm like, what the hell is this? And I go on to read the caption, and then I go listen to the episode, and my buddy had told this story about, and somehow it got twisted that Tom Hanks is a Napalm Death fan. That all came from that conversation. And this picture, had like 25,000 likes on Instagram. People really thought Tom Hanks loved Napalm Death, all from that story. Anyway, I digress. Kind of back to the question, I'm not even sure if I asked this in the beginning, but I think you kind of answered in telling of how you ended up getting into film. But today, what inspires you? Like, what gets you out of bed today? What do you get excited about?
One, it's, creatively, it's watching other shows, looking at photographs, things like that really do, or even music. There's a lot of good music out there that inspire me, but watching to better my career is watching TV and movies, and I watch it. It's, a lot of people comment, or family members and friends, about how it's different to watch a movie with me, but I think it's any filmmaker, it's a different experience because we watch it we see different things. And it's a different experience for fellow filmmakers to watch a movie. And especially for me, because I will watch something not just for a good storyline or because of the actors or what have you. It's because of the lighting or the production value. And so I will watch something strictly for that. And so when I see something, I'll kind of fixate or take a deep dive on who the chief lighting technician was, who the DOP was, who the production designer was, who the art department staff, who all came together to create this image that I'm fascinated by. And then I try to pick that, and try to learn from that. And I'll make a lot of reference. There's a lot of stuff where, some stuff I've watched during this downtime that I've made notes of and that I want to try on one of my sets. It's like how I want to light something, how they did certain things. And I want to carry that onto one of my sets.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's I would say that's probably definitely an inspiration. I've been going to church a lot lately, and that's been really helpful, finding new paths.
Yeah.
So I've leaned really hard into that the last, year and a half, 2 years, and that has helped me a lot. Making time, spending more time with my family has really helped. And so I think all that together, time with your family, church, whatever that religion that you might have,
aspect.
you have to lean into that and give you that perspective. And, for me, it's being around everybody I'm sitting in church with every Sunday. For like today, I'm not in my town, so I watch my church online.
Yeah.
It's you're there with other like-minded people.
Hmm.
Say what you will about religion, whatever religion you're in. I'm around people that want to do better, that
Yeah.
want to help one another. Whatever your belief is, I've got 500 other people sitting next to me that want to do something better. And
Yeah.
I've really leaned into that. I'm like, all right, I know I can find several friends sitting around here that want to help.
Yeah.
And anyway, I've learned, I've grown a lot from that. So, and it it means a lot to me right now. So, and I I've always been somewhat religious, especially growing up, but now I've really I'm making time for it now. I'm studying now. So,
That's awesome.
yeah.
Uh, Along the same line, what else do you want to accomplish in life? Do you have a particular interest or any other goals?
Um, I want to provide for my family. My number. That's why I sit here. Um, Make sure I leave something for them, even if it's not necessarily uh, financially, but I want to at least hopefully they learn something from me. So if there's ever, I don't have big life insurance policies. I don't have a wealth of, a big bank account. I don't have some great empire that I'm leaving them, but I hope that they at least learn my work ethic,
Yeah.
um, and that I try to provide for them. Um, and that, sitting here alone, um, a 3-day drive away from my family right now, it's it's hard, as
Yes.
sitting on a tour bus or whatever, and sitting in a different, when I was over in Eastern Europe and I was uh 7 time zones away from my
Yep.
family, that is hard.
It's a different feeling of lonely, that
It,
being that isolated from those you love.
yep. And so what, that particular project, I was trying to talk to my family while they're eating breakfast, and I just finished lunch.
Yeah.
I'm halfway through my day. So, but anyway, so that's what I hope that my family and friends know that I tried to guide and offered some information to them. Hopefully they got that or get it. Um, you know, for me creatively, it's to create an image that inspires someone else. Like I mentioned earlier, where
Yeah.
I see an image that inspires me, be it a photograph or listen to a song or a TV show or movie, and I take that deep dive. I hope there's a project that I've done that somebody did the same for me. Like, how did they do this? And it's not just me, it's a crew of people, but how did they do this and why?
Yeah.
And so I hope I'm able to help create an image that inspires someone like that. So, and I will do that till the day I die. I know, because I'm just that creative mindset where I feel like I've always got to, you know, keep doing something. So creatively.
What is there any shows, film that's come out recently? What do you and also podcasts? What are you listening to and watching right now?
My favorite podcast is How I Built This.
Yeah.
Guy Raz, I would love to meet that man. Anyway, I will listen to that. I'll listen to it every week. Um, he has several. It's How I Built This, and a very very busy man. He was a NPR journalist, but now podcast and been doing it for several years. Love that. Love that podcast. Uh, I'm reading the Fourth Wing series. I'm on Iron Flame right now, about to finish it. I want to work on that TV show, so I would love to do that show. I know I think it's gonna be it is gonna be a TV series. Um, So I wish I could do that because creatively, just the way this production design is going to be in the lighting, I really wish I could do that. TV shows, I just finished Severance,
Yeah.
which is a really good show, and I just finished Silo, which Silo has production value wise and lighting wise there's some good inspiration. I love the color values that they created in production design that went into it. So that's probably, I'm trying to think of any movies. I haven't seen any features that I can think of right now lately. So
Well, because you mentioned Guy Raz, uh, totally stealing his question,
yeah,
uh, how much do you feel of your career has been because of luck, and how much,
yeah.
or how much because it was what you earned?
I didn't know that you were going to ask that question. That's a good one. I love how Guy ends his every episode like that. I'm glad you asked that. I think I think it's a small piece of luck. I think you have to aspire for something, and which I did, and there's a lot of hard work in it, a lot of dedication that has to go into it, um, because it's so challenging on, me, but as a filmmaker in general, that you have to be dedicated to it. But in reference to me, I feel like I did put a lot of hard work into it, but I also feel like I was offered some opportunities, call that luck or what have you. Somebody took a chance on me. Therefore, I'm lucky that someone took a chance on me.
Yeah,
And so I definitely think there is some luck involved for sure. And
gotcha.
I'm grateful and fortunate every day because of it. The people,
Yeah.
the friends and friendships I've made over the years for sure. So
As our friend Ted Underwood would say, this is quite a life we've carved out for ourselves. I really appreciate you doing this. I appreciate your friendship over the years. Um,
yeah, I'm glad we were able to do it. This is great.
awesome. Uh, thanks, buddy.